Okay, open your little atheist books to page 71. 70. We'll go through that first. Are we ready?
Yes.
Because we're rolling. Well, ladies, thank you. So chapter 10 is, do we have eyewitness testimony about Jesus? And the main idea is the New Testament has early independent eyewitness written testimony within one generation of the events. Therefore, the accounts of the New Testament cannot be considered legendary. And some of the terms for this chapter is eyewitness testimony and historical crosshairs. You know this word, crosshairs? If you're a hunter, you do. It's the scope, and it's got that thing, and you're trying to get right where those lines line up. What significance do eyewitnesses bring to a case, and how does that translate to the validity of the New Testament? So let's start with the first one, because eyewitnesses are the best, truthful eyewitnesses, obviously, are the best kinds have the best kinds of testimony because they were there, they saw it, right? So, what credibility do um, they have, or what makes them credible? Yes.
Like why eyewitnesses? I mean, they were there, so they could see it, and if there's multiple eyewitnesses, then their stories can be like compared. You can find what's true and what's constant.
Yeah, and you can find what's false as well, right? And that's why the word independent is important, because the eyewitnesses were spread around. Like John was in Turkey, and Peter was in Israel, and especially now today, like you just pick up your phone and say, "Hey, let's tell the teacher this," but they wouldn't have had that ability. But they all tell the same basic story, right? So they bring credibility to the narrative because they saw the events with their own eyes. Um, and we believe other credible eyewitnesses on other different things. If you go to a courtroom, and I've been in a courtroom, not on the stand and not being adjudicated, um, but they're very precise in asking questions to find out what is true. And those eyewitnesses are the best. You know, they don't in a American courtroom and probably European and other places. Do you know this term hearsay? Yeah. So you can't go on the stand and say, well, Tom told me this. They'll say, nope, hearsay. It's inadmissible. Um, so the disciples and others, and Paul talks about more than 500 at one time, would be believable eyewitnesses in any court because they were there. So if we generally believe people who take the oath on the stand and tell the truth, why do we think these men are credible? Okay, number 2. Write down some scriptures whereby the authors and their counterparts describe how they were eyewitnesses of certain events. So you don't have to give me the exact address. Just tell me some things that you've learned in this chapter that come from the Bible that tell us that the eyewitnesses. Any? I'm sorry, what?
Can you repeat the question?
How do you know that the new no. Write down some scriptures whereby the authors and their counterparts describe how they were eyewitnesses of certain events. So, what stories in the New Testament? What are any stories that you know that the disciples and others are claiming to be eyewitnesses? Yes, the crucifixion, right? And John writes, I was there, basically, right? I saw it with my own eyes. Yes.
Like the story of the rocks and
Yeah, the devil is in the details. I don't know if you've ever heard that saying.
That's a song.
But I did not know that. But that's okay. If it's not 70s, I'm probably not going to like it. So it when we get into too many details and we're not telling the truth, we're going to get tripped up. I'm sorry if I've told you this story already. I don't remember which classes I have, but I taught with a woman at Miller North years and years ago, and she told the story that she had 4 boys one day walk in to her class late first hour, and they said, "We're so sorry, we had a flat tire and we were late." She said, "Oh, that's fine. Just sit down, but you're gonna have to stay after because we took a quiz. You're gonna have to take that after class." And so after everyone was gone, she gave each of them a piece of paper. She put them away from one another, and she said, "Really, the quiz only had one question: which tire?" And they all gave different answers, right? So she knew they were lying. And that's what happens when you're being tried in a trial. If the stories don't line up, then they're not going to believe it. But we also have the same basic storyline with different details, not competing details, just different details. If I asked each one of you to write I'm not going to, a paragraph about what Pastor Stout talked about, you'd all say the basic same thing. Well, he talked to us about idols and how idols are not good and what we need to do about idols. But then you'd have different specific things that were different, true, but different. And that's what we have in the New Testament. Not competing details, corroborating details. So in John, and it's saying some scripture. So in John 19:33-35, again, this is going to be the AKB. He says this. He says, the man who is writing this saw it with his own eyes. That's basically what John said. And he went to his grave proclaiming it. In fact, all of the disciples did. And plus Paul. They all died for their faith. Only John, except for John, was the only one that died a natural death. But he had been horribly abused in the meantime. And not one of them said, we made it up to save their own skin. The only reason they went to their deaths, not proclaiming Christ, and was because they saw it with their own eyes. They knew who he was. And then Paul, who was not a disciple, but he goes before both Agrippa and Festus and preaches the gospel. And he's on his way to Rome, where he will eventually be martyred. And the worst thing he could have said to these two men who were not believers was to tell them the gospel. And in fact, I can't remember if it was Festus or Agrippa. I think it was Agrippa that said, "Do you think in such a short time you would make me a Christian?" And he says, "I wish everyone," this is the AKB too, so "I wish everyone would be just as I am, except for these chains. Um, be free." Um, so now, number three, how do you know that the New Testament has reliable witnesses, witnesses that told the truth? Yes. And we see that that's true because same basic story, different details, just like we just talked about. What did it cost them? Their lives. Their lives. They were all persecuted, and all but one were martyred, including Paul, who was not a disciple, but he saw Jesus. Um, so on the road to Damascus. So they give accurate details, and um, and then and they claim things that were falsifiable, if not true. That um, could have been proven false, if not true. And then the other one we said is it cost them their life. Nobody dies for a lie that they know is a lie. They say, "Nope, I lied." These men died for a truth that they knew was the truth. And that's the only explanation that makes sense. Okay, we're done with that. Good job on that.